the Asher Longevity Institute, we are committed to describing the 9 steps needed to achieve an unlimited life. In step 3, John Asher explains how to tune your diet for a healthy gut microbiome to avoid 9 diseases and 4 conditions. Let's drop into the presentation now.
If you have a healthy microbiome, it precludes all of these diseases. If you have a healthy gut microbiome, you don't get the leaky gut syndrome, and you don't get any of these diseases. To give you a couple of examples, the third one on the left, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, a third of the population has that. If you look at the bottom, small intestine bacterial overgrowth, or the next one on the top of the next column, small intestine fungi overgrowth, it's the same thing. Down there on the right is IBS and IBD, irritable bowel syndrome that some of you may have heard of, and inflamed bowel disease, a worst case of it. So if you want to preclude all of these, then you need a great gut microbiome with great bacteria in it. So this is the reason why you're hearing all this news about the gut microbiome. So let's start with the definitions. First of all, our gut is from when the food goes in to the food goes out, all that's called our gut. Many people think the gut refers just to the stomach. It's not. It's the whole digestive system. The microbiome is what's in your gut, other than the food we eat. And so there are trillions of bacteria, fungi, worms, viruses, 5 pounds of bacteria, good and bad. And what we want is mainly good bacteria. And so the good bacteria in our gut is called probiotics. And the food that the good bacteria love to eat is called prebiotics. So prebiotics is just the food. They have a lot of soluble and insoluble fiber that the probiotics, the good bacteria, love to eat. And it's another reason why probiotic supplements are so popular, because they're adding good bacteria to our gut. And why fermented foods like kombucha and sauerkraut and pickles are popular now, because they're adding good bacteria to our gut. Here's a list of the typical foods that add great prebiotics to our gut that the good gut bacteria love to eat. You can see 2 of them have a star by them. And the reason I put a star by them is they're very difficult to find fresh. Very difficult. Not in Trader Joe's, not in Whole Foods, not in Wegmans. But there are supplements you can buy, which is what I take, which gives you the supplement that's full of that fiber. Now let's look at the gut connection to the brain. Our largest nerve in our body is called the vagus nerve. It goes from our brain stem, hearts, lungs, and gut. Big nerve that connects all 4. And there are 8 as many messages that go from the gut to the brain as the brain to the gut. So you might ask yourself, who's actually really in control here? In many cases, it's your gut. And I'll give you just a fun example. So when I read the Plant Paradox 4 or 5 years ago, Dr. Gundry, one of you all mentioned him, he's one of my heroes. He had a 5-day cleanse. He called it a cleanse. And that is, if you follow a very strict diet, low calorie also for 5 days, you would get rid of a lot of the bad bacteria and encourage the growth of the good bacteria. And so I just happened to be, when I was reading this down at our beach house, and I said, why not? We're here for a week, and we're just my wife and I. Why not try it? So I did. And he claimed that if you do this, there at the end of it, your gut will cause your sense of smell to be different. In other words, foods that are good for you will smell good. Foods that are bad for you will smell horrible. Your cravings will change. You'll crave leafy green vegetables and avocados, which his cleanse is full of. And food that isn't good for you, you won't crave. You can just easily not eat it. So I did it. Maybe a week later, we're at one of my grandson's birthday parties. So we're there. The kids are all eating their meal, or eating their, I forget exactly what they're eating, but they're all having fun and talking. And then I could hear the back door open. I didn't look around. But then there was this horrible smell. So I turned to my wife and I kind of whispered to her, "What's that horrible smell?" She looked around. She said, "What do you mean?" "That's the pizza." So my brain now had been trained by my gut that pizza was not good for me. And I've always loved pizza. That pizza was not good for me, so don't eat it. So it actually happened the way Dr. Gundry said it would happen. We have the whole gut has a barrier called the gut lining. Mucosal barrier is a fancy name. And it's very thin. It's only like a molecule thick. And if any of these trillions of bacteria break through the gut lining and get out into the bloodstream, they'll totally mess up and quickly go everywhere from the lymph system and get in all the organs and wreak havoc with our body. And then the immune system goes to work, causing all this chronic inflammation. So the leaky gut syndrome that some of you have heard of, I'm sure, that caused all those 9 conditions on my opening slide for this step, you really don't want that. And the trouble with it is wheat easily will break through that gut lining. So to sum this up, the good bacteria mainly love a vegan diet without these 6 points. And the bad bacteria love a Western diet. So just like you asked me to, I'm going to cover each one of these 6 points, not just Gundry, but essentially what they all say about this. So first, let's take lectin. Here's the background. Been around for millions of years. Plants develop it to ward off insects and animals from eating the plant. Been around for millions of years. Corn and other grains have only been cultivated for 10,000 years. So our guts have not gotten used to grains enough yet. 10,000 years versus millions. And so when you eat lectin, especially from wheat, it will easily break through your gut lining, causing the leaky gut syndrome, resulting in any of all those list of 9 diseases I mentioned. Bottom line, don't eat so many grains. Do I eat whole wheat every now and then? I do, but not much. Or animals, poultry, and other farm-raised fish that are fed corn, typically. And all legumes, as we're just chatting about, are a ton of lectin. They're lectin bombs. But you can easily get rid of that lectin. And some of you may remember when you were a kid, your mother or your grandmother, especially kidney beans, would soak beans overnight. And our grandmothers and mothers knew if you didn't do that, it would cause digestive upset for everybody who ate them the next day. That's why they soaked them. Well, it turns out they didn't know about lectin back then, but that's what was causing it, was the lectin in beans. And when you soak them overnight, you get rid of about half the lectin. If you pressure cook them, you get rid of almost all of it. Or easier, for me anyway, just buy the Eden brand of beans. They have all the beans you can think of, available at Whole Foods and Trader Joe's, and they've already been pressure cooked. So you can eat the Eden brand of beans, any legume, and you've got the benefit, the fiber, and the protein without the lectin. So let's see what we can do. If we can't eat any damn grains, what do we do about this? Well, there's so many products on the market now that are grain-free. So if you like taco shells, tortillas, chips, there's a Siete brand. And if you look at the ingredients, over here on the right, grain-free, gluten-free, et cetera, with avocado oil, where almost all chips are made with the disgusting canola oil. These are made with olive oil. And they're grain-free because they're made with the cassava root, which is wildly used for flour in Latin America and Asia. Another brand of coconut chips. And again, the ingredients are coconut flour, cassava root, and coconut oil. And this is one where my body craves these chips. I can eat the whole bag if I don't wash myself. In other words, my system is telling me, these are so good for you, keep eating more of these. Actually, to me, they taste great. My wife doesn't particularly like them, but I love them.
Hey,
and then,
John,
again, here's yes, sir.
The coconut tortilla chips, I noticed that they have that Himalayan pink salt in that too, which is also good for us as well, right?
Agree.
Okay.
And this is just one of, there's about 6 different ones. And also the Siete brand, there's ones with sea salt, ones with, vinegar, and there's all kinds of different choices. And for the Siete brand, there's taco shells, there's tortillas. So anything you normally eat from the Latino market, they've got. So here's the Eden brand of beans already pressure cooked. So great protein, great fiber, no lectin. The next subject would be cows and milk, dairy products. Here's what's happened to most of our cows 2,000 years ago. So most of us, maybe a third of the people in the company are what are called lactose intolerant. It's actually not the lactose. It's this casein A1 protein that was genetically morphing from the casein A2. And again, lots of alternatives. There's goat milk. There's actually dairy milk made from cows without that genetic mutation. A different breed of cows, not the main cows in the U.S. And there's all kinds of goat products. Now there's goat Greek yogurt. So you can eat that yogurt, get the probiotics from the yogurt, and get the protein because it's the Greek yogurt. And just to give you an idea on how the public is wising up to this, there was a 60 Minutes show, maybe 6 months ago, that showed that 1 million small dairy farmers in the U.S. have gone out of business in the last 5 years. And there was a headline in the Wall Street Journal recently, gosh, I forget the name, but anyway, that #1 dairy organization that owns a whole bunch of dairies just filed for Chapter 11. So the public's pretty much wising up on this. Next is the problem with sugar. Alan Keyes, Dr. Keyes, made this incorrect assumptions and skewed the data to what he wanted to say. And the country went on a big craze about getting fat out of our diet. Cholesterol's bad for you. We all know it's all BS now. But what the food manufacturers did in response to that was take the fat out of a lot of foods. The trouble was the food tasted horrible without the fat in it. So I'm sure you can guess what the food manufacturers added: sugar to make it taste better. So sugar is in almost every processed food. Here's some examples. Now, I highlighted ketchup in red because it is red, and it's always been a favorite of mine. Once I realized how much sugar it has in it, I'm just not eating ketchup anymore. It's not like I never eat it anymore, but very, very rarely. And sugar substitutes actually screw up our microbiome, the artificial sugar substitutes. So all of these things are essentially poison to our microbiome. Now, the good news is there are good substitutes. These are 2 plants, monk fruit and stevia, approved by the FDA as a sugar substitute, and they're a natural substitute. So if you're going to use sweetener of any type, use one of these, stevia or monk fruit. They give you a couple of examples. We all know chocolate. Dark chocolate's a great food for us. It's a polyphenol. It also has a hormetic effect, which I'll show you later. But almost all chocolate has sugar in it. So there's a kind of do I eat the sugar in this? Or the dark chocolate's good for me, but the sugar isn't. Now what do I do? Well, now there's a brand, Lily's, that's made with stevia. So dark chocolate with stevia. So you can get around this issue as well now. This is carried at Whole Foods, I know for sure, because that's where I shop. And every now and then my wife makes cookies, and she's not using the old flour, sugar, butter recipe anymore. Here's the recipe. It's basically these 2 things. And you can see the little bowl. I put a bowl of the monk fruit there, so you can see it actually is granular, just like natural sugar is. And these actually taste good. Now, maybe my microbiome has got my mind thinking that they're good when they're not, but I think they actually taste good. My kids think they're good too. Now, who's been to a Courtyard Marriott? They have that waffle iron deal. And they usually have a pitcher full of syrup you can put on it, or there'll be a little container and it's full of these little packages of sugar-free breakfast syrup. And so if you're trying to watch your weight, you're going, great. sugar-free. But you can kind of see there's a lot of ingredients in this. And so when you blow up those ingredients, here's what they are. Notice the top 3 are artificial sugars, sweeteners, that are killing your good gut bacteria. So not as good for us as we might think. And some of you, I'm sure, have heard about the dangers of this high fructose corn syrup that's in almost every processed food, based on, of course, corn, a grain, lectin. And if you just buy table sugar or a package of sugar in the store, it's usually half natural sugar and half of this stuff. So you might think, I've just bought sugar for my coffee. I'm getting corn? Come on. Well, that's what you're getting. All right, let's go to meat. So about 30 years ago in Cornell Medical School, a young Chinese doctor joined the staff on a 3-year tour. And once the main doctor who wrote the study, I can't remember his name, realized that in China at the time, everybody stayed in their province. They couldn't go from province to province. They knew exactly what food they had in that province. So the food didn't go from province to province. And they kept meticulous records on what people die from. And if you just blow the whole study up, it's a huge book about this thick. The bottom line was shift to a plant-based diet. You want to live longer? Shift to a plant-based diet. So it doesn't mean you can't eat any meat ever, but don't eat so much. Let's take a look at the Beyond Burger. So when this first came out about a year ago, my wife and I bought this package and we bought a package of sausage. We said, yay, an alternative. And we ate it, and I'm not kidding, it tasted great. It tasted just like meat. And then, stupidly, I looked at the ingredients after we'd eaten it instead of before I bought it. Here's the ingredients. Who would naturally eat titanium dioxide? By the way, in the NOVA classification system, big nutrition organization, an ultra-processed food means it could not be worse for you. It's the worst possible class of food. And of course, the protein in these types of foods, totally from pea, other legumes, so it's a lectin bomb as well. And the oil in it is canola oil. So it's almost like you couldn't invent it to be any worse for you than it is. Now let's look at the dangers of pesticides. We all heard about the controversy from Roundup. Here's the main reason. The main ingredient, glyphosate, is an antibiotic. And antibiotics, of course, kill our good gut bacteria. And bad, but also some of the good. So stick to organic food as much as you can. And there's a lot of information about what organic means for different foods. But the main idea is it doesn't have any pesticides. So when you eat organic food or eat organic meat or chicken or wild-caught salmon, no pesticides. Now, the Department of Agriculture has an environmental working group that's been around for a long time, and their output comes out every year. And last year they came out with what they call the Dirty Dozen. And here's the Dirty Dozen. So if these dozen fruits and vegetables are sprayed with pesticides, it is almost impossible to get it off before you eat it. So the bottom line would be buy organic. And that's one of the reasons I shop at Whole Foods. Everything's organic, essentially. Now, some of us may have heard an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Great. Well, that would be an organic apple, not an apple that's not organic. You can see over here on the right, all the nasty stuff that stays with that apple when you eat it. And here's the dangers of antibiotics and hormones in all these farm animals. So to illustrate how bad a broad spectrum antibiotic is, if your child has an ear infection, you go to the doctor will prescribe a specific antibiotic to fix that ear infection. Later, if another child has a strep throat, you go to the doctor, she will give him a different antibiotic tuned to fix that type of infection. All these farm animals, fish, farm-raised fish, all of them are fed a broad-spectrum antibiotic that kills everything. And so when you're eating these animals, you're getting that as well. So let's see what we should eat and how we should eat it from a meat and fish standpoint. First, eat about 4 ounces a day is all you really need for a protein, and that's about 2 decacards. So it's plenty. It's like about a small fillet. If you're going to eat fish and sell fish, eat it wild caught, mainly because those open ocean salmon, for example, are eating algae full of omega-3. And farm raised sounds pretty sexy, doesn't it? Yay, farm raised, cool. Well, they're grown in pens or tanks, eating all this stuff I'm showing here. They're full of antibiotics, full of hormones. They're eating grain. They're eating foods with canola oil in them, and they're eating, I haven't researched yet why, but they're eating chicken feces pellets. So if you're going to eat salmon, for example, and you're out at a restaurant, ask, is it farm raised or wild caught? And if you shop at Costco, so Costco in their fish counter, 2 big fish counters, one wild caught, one farm raised. If you look at the salmon in the farm raised counter, it's a light pink color. If you look at it in the wild caught section, it's this bright orange color. And the only reason a salmon is a light pink color, because it comes out of the tank gray, is they add color to it to give it a light pink color. And most restaurants now, especially ones that are nicer restaurants, will be carrying the wild caught, or in some cases give you a choice. Poultry, same thing. You want it pasture raised, free of antibiotics and hormones. Meat, you want it to be grass finished, meaning it's only eaten grass its whole life, no corn, no grain of any type, no antibiotics, hormone free. And all this stuff is now pretty wildly available at these types of stores. Wegman, I could add Wegmans to the list as well. Chicken is also available. So here's one packaged from Whole Foods. We just ate it 2 days ago. So it's pasture raised, no antibiotics, no pesticides, no hormones. So the typical chickens that are grown in the chicken houses have a 1 foot square pen that they're in. If it's range free, it's a 2 foot square. So it's almost no difference. If it's pasture raised, like you just suggested, then it's out there in the pasture hunting and pecking and not eating grain is the idea. Beef is also available. That's got most of these attributes. No hormones, no antibiotics, grass finished. And again, the difference between grass fed and grass finished is grass finished means it's mainly eating grass. Grass fed could eat grass 10% of the time and corn the rest of the time. So unfortunately, there's a big difference between grass fed and grass finished. So let's summarize. Here's what you could consider not eating or not eating as much of. I love the name of this book, The Grain Brain. And here's what we could consider eating more of. So here is a slide that shows which of the vegetables have the most protein. And then, of course, legumes have a ton of protein, which are great for us as long as they're pressure cooked. You buy the brands that have been already pressure cooked. Here's a typical meal for me. So for breakfast, a closed fist of walnuts, pistachios, and macadamia nuts, and a cup of mixed berries, blueberries, strawberries, blackberries, and raspberries. About half the lunches I eat will be a smoothie. And the reason I'm not a smoothie addict, is the reason I make them is I have a blender a little bit bigger than the one shown here in the picture. And I can put all this stuff in it and make 6 meals. Put, say, 3 in the freezer, drink 1, put 2 more in the refrigerator. And for me, it's just a time management thing. Because if you eat all that stuff, it's like a bowl this big for a meal, and it takes 20 minutes to eat it. So for me, having smoothies is just a time management thing. And of course, you want the right stuff in the smoothie. And you can see what a dinner would look like. And I'm totally have a sweet tooth. And so I'm always looking for something sweet. And so a great sweet tooth satisfier would be dried fruit. And if this was an in-person presentation, I'd be giving you a fig to try. So you're just going to have to imagine eating a fig. Now, about 80% of the dried fruit in our country is the fruit plus sugar, or the fruit plus sugar plus canola oil. So you want to make sure you're getting the dried fruit with no sugar added. Here's another sample day for me. And I've always loved ice cream. But now there's good alternatives to the dairy ice cream. Here's just a picture of the freezers in a Whole Foods store. So you can see there's a ton of different alternatives now to ice cream from milk, dairy milk. Here's one of my favorites. You see there on the left, only 180 calories. So let's sum this up. If you go to pages 3 and 4 in your handout, there will be 12 steps to go from whatever you're doing now to eating healthy foods that are tuned for a brilliant gut microbiome. Here's the first 6 steps. And here's the second 6 steps. So about 3 years ago, my wife and I, with a magnet, put this on the refrigerator. And we said, this is impossible to implement right away. Let's just take 1 step a month. As we got into it, it turned out we could do 1 step every 2 weeks. Just make some small changes. So that's where I've got up on the title, just take 1 step a month. Because it's overwhelming to try to do it all in the same time frame.
We hope you enjoyed this video, and don't forget to watch the entire series, including the most important 9th step. If you would like to download a simplified checklist of step 3, click the link in the description. And to stay abreast of emerging protocols to extend life, consider becoming a premium member at www.asherlongevity.com.